So I'd like to begin with a poem today. This poem was written by Molly Brown, who together with Joanna Macy, who recently passed away, who was the creator of the work that reconnects, wrote a book called Coming Back to Life. It is our Bible, those of us who do this work. Ancient ones, residing in the forest, speak to me. Fill me with your wildness, your wisdom, your abiding now. Let me see all of the projects and tasks that consume my days in the vast perspective of your time. Let me see them as at one with the forming of a seed cone, the pushing out of leaf and stem, the chatter of gray squirrel, the flight of chickadee, the flow of water in the creek, all taking place within the embrace of life, all held in love. So today I'd like to talk about biomimicry. Oops. It is rather a new science, but it actually came into the vernacular back in 1997 with this book called Biomimicry, Innovation Inspired by Nature by Janine Benyus, and she is still the authority on this. Since that time, she has started a Biomimicry Institute, and there have been a lot of innovations and a lot of talks about this. There are many things on the internet if you're interested. She's often invited to speak at Bioneers as a keynote speaker. She's done TED Talks, and she just has her own stuff too. She is a scientist, she's a biologist, but she's also a really good writer. So this book, even though it's scientific, it's not dry. It's not a tough read, and she has a lot of humor, so it's enjoyable. So the word biomimicry comes from the Greek bios, meaning life, and mimesis, meaning imitation. So the basic concept of biomimicry is that nature, having been around for a very long time, has already figured out how to do just about everything that we need to do. Nature knows how to keep itself going. It knows how to be resilient. It knows how to create systems and environments that allow for the thriving of everything within that system. It takes the long haul view of things. It's farsighted. It doesn't waste anything. It doesn't need a landfill. It doesn't pollute. Everything flows into everything else, and we would do well to take a look at nature. We're very innovative, we're very creative, but we haven't really learned how to live on this planet for the long haul. We don't take care of things. We can create things and start things, but we're not good at maintaining them and creating things that work for everyone. So, looking at nature as model. Biomimicry is a relatively new science that studies nature's models and then imitates or takes inspiration from these designs and processes to solve human problems. For example, the solar cell was originally invented by watching how leaves photosynthesize the sun. Nature is measure. Biomimicry uses an ecological standard to judge the correctness of our innovations. After 3.8 billion years of evolution, nature has learned what works, what is appropriate, and what lasts. And finally, nature as mentor. Biomimicry is a new, old way of viewing and valuing nature. It ushers in an era based not on what we extract from the natural world, but on what we can learn from it. And some of you know that I have spent the past 7 years doing the work that reconnects, but the past 2 years in Seminary of the Wild, which is a body of study that teaches ways to reconnect with the natural world, to kind of gradually learn how to be in nature, how to drop our humanness maybe a little bit, and to actually listen and to look and to rejoin the conversation that everything else is having with everybody else except for us. And it has been the most amazing experience for me. It is difficult. I didn't realize how much of an anthropocentric viewpoint I still had when I started this. It's kind of like when you're trying to do anti-oppression and anti-racist work. You have no idea how much of those old ways of thinking are still there because we're just in it all the time without thinking about it. So it's kind of the same thing. So in her book, she starts with a quote from Václav Havel, who was at the time the president of Czechoslovakia, and he says, "We must draw our standards from the natural world. We must honor with the humility of the wise the bounds of that natural world and the mystery that lies beyond them, admitting that there is something in the order of being which evidently exceeds all our competence." And she writes, "It has been an incredible 3.8 billion years since the first bacteria emerged on Earth. In that time, life has learned to fly, circumvent the globe, live in the depths of the ocean and atop the highest peaks, craft miracle materials, light up the night, lasso the sun's energy, and build a self-reflective brain. Collectively, organisms have managed to turn rock and sea into a life-friendly home with steady temperatures and smoothly percolating cycles. In short, living things have done everything we want to do without guzzling fossil fuels, polluting the planet, or mortgaging their future. What better models could there be? If we can find a way to finally set aside our anthropocentric arrogance and false sense of superiority and drop into humility, we can learn to open our eyes and to listen to the wisdom all around us. We can discover what works in the natural world, and more importantly, what lasts. After 3 billion years of research and development, failures become fossils, and what surrounds us is the secret to survival. The more our world looks and functions like the natural world, the more we are likely to be accepted on this home that is ours, but not ours alone. This is not news to Indigenous people. Virtually all native cultures worldwide that have survived without following their own nests have acknowledged that nature knows best and have had the humility to ask the bears, the wolves, the ravens, and the redwoods for guidance. We, in our culture, have lost our ability to ask the creatures directly, but it is not too late to ask the Indigenous people who, at this time, with so much grace, in my opinion, are willing to step forward and share their knowledge with us, to share their ways with us. And maybe it's simply that they know if they don't, we're all going down. It could be that. But there are so many teachers who are really coming forth and willing to teach us how to live on this earth the way they have learned, and we should take advantage of that. So here's a list of nature's laws. Nature does have laws, and if you go against them, things do not go well for you. And it's not personal, it's the way it is. So here are some of nature's laws. Nature runs on sunlight. Nature uses only the energy it needs, not more. Nature fits form to function. Nature recycles everything. Nature rewards cooperation. The old adage about survival of the fittest is really not true. We would not be here today if people before us had not figured out how to cooperate, because they had to. They lived in such harsh conditions when humans first came here that they had to band together, whether they wanted to or not, or they would not be our ancestors. Nature banks on diversity. Nature demands local expertise. Nature curbs excesses from within. And nature taps the power of limits. Biomimicry has been used in the past long before being named as such. Perhaps the last really famous biomimetic invention was the airplane. The Wright brothers watched vultures to learn the nuances of drag and lift. We flew like a bird for the first time in 1903, and by 1914, we were dropping bombs from the air. Perhaps in the end, it will not be a change in technology that brings us to a biomimetic future, but a change of heart. a humbling that allows us to be attentive to nature's lessons. As author Bill McKibben has pointed out, our tools are always deployed in the service of some philosophy or ideology. If we are to use our tools in the service of fitting in on Earth, our basic relationship to nature, even the story we tell ourselves about who we are in the universe, has to change. It is time for us as a culture to walk in the forest again. Once we see nature as a mentor, a teacher, a relative, our relationship with the natural world changes. Gratitude tempers greed, and the notion of treating the natural world as resource versus kin becomes abhorrent. We realize that our very survival as a species depends wholly on safeguarding nature, and that all the answers are here for us to learn. Once we step back into the conversation, we can begin to reconnect, restore, and rekindle our sense of belonging on this planet as members of a very large, diverse, and beautiful family. So I've gathered some examples of biomimetic applications. There are more than 90 on the net. I just chose a few of them. And the first one I think you all know about. The first one is Velcro. So who among you at some point in your life walked through meadows and emerged with sticky burrs all over the bottoms of your pants, right? Or your dog? Everybody. So that was some Swedish guy, Switzerland. Some Swiss guy in 1941 was walking through meadows with his dog and had that happen, and decided as he was picking them off, I guess he was kind of a nerd, he put them under a microscope, and he noticed that there's a little hook on each one of those sticky things, and they joined together, and that's how Velcro came to be. And it's still in use. It's really not biomimicry, though, because it's plastic. So until they figure out a better way to do Velcro, it doesn't really qualify. But that's the first example that I could identify with. And I have, the burdock plant, and I have a volunteer burdock plant that lives in my garden that I leave alone. It's huge. Because you can eat the root, too. I really like burdock root. So it's very nutritious. It's a good blood purifier. Airplanes, obviously, airplanes come from watching birds, and I am always amazed when I am getting ready to take off that something that big and that heavy can actually become airborne. And if you've ever watched a big bird like an eagle or a condor or a turkey vulture, they have a hard time getting up there. It just looks like they're not going to make it, and at the last minute, they do. More efficient water drainage. Somebody figured out that the secret to eliminating clogged drains was to have the drain not just be a straight tubular thing, but to mimic the spiral. There are spirals all over nature. Spirals, whirlpools are spirals, tornadoes, seashells. It's a really common geometric form in nature. And so they have designed drains that follow that. They're spirals, so the water enters and it automatically is directed down and picks up speed as it goes. So you don't have to use Drano. I could use this actually in my tub. Wind turbines. This is fascinating to me. So there are two different kinds, the kinds that we're used to seeing with the big paddles. But the paddles were designed from observing the fins of humpback whales. Somebody realized that there are bumps on the fins, and these bumps on their flippers decrease drag and increase lift. So that is how they designed the paddles on the turbines that we are used to seeing in this area. And they also use them for ceiling fans and propeller blades. But elsewhere, I don't know if it's in this country, but in the Middle East, in like the desert lands, there's a new kind of wind turbine and farms, and the paddles, instead of looking like we know that they go straight up. So they're in a circle, there's a circle of them going straight up. And somebody watched schools of fish, how they move in the water, how they don't disturb the water, and how they don't bang into each other, but how they move in unison. So they designed these blades on the wind turbines. And the first one starts, and the drag from it makes the second one start rotating, and they rotate vertically. So this is great because they don't take up as much space. You can put more of them in a smaller area, and they don't interfere with bird migration. They're a lot safer for the birds. So I hope we have more of those around here. Prairies, prairie ecosystem. So we all know the tragedy of the Dust Bowl, right? How the prairie was the perfect ecosystem until settlers decided that they would just dig up all the native grasses and expose the soil to wind and to the droughts that are often present in the prairies. And everything just turned to dust. They couldn't grow anything, and they finally had to move. So they have decided, they have studied this, and the native grasses that were there were designed for that ecosystem. They have roots that go down 20 feet, 30 feet. And so it holds them. They can withstand the high winds that sweep over the plains without being pulled up. Because their roots go so deep, they can get water, so they can survive droughts. And they're perennial. So there is a whole movement now out there to work with native grasses that we haven't used yet for food, but that could be made into food, and plant them. They're all perennials, so you till once, you never have to till again, so you're no longer disturbing the soil. There's a whole no-till movement. I don't till either. So you're leaving the soil intact, all the bugs and the worms and everything that's doing its thing, they can do their thing. The grasses, these grasses have deep roots too, so they are more drought resistant and resistant to winds. Alongside that, they plant other crops that are also perennial, that are lower. So it works kind of like the Three Sisters thing with the corn and the squash and the beans. Everything is complementary and feeds into the whole system. And because it's healthier, they are they're drought resistant, they're resistant to erosion because the soil is no longer, it's never bare, there's always something growing there. Because the soil is healthier, the plants are more resistant to pests and insects, so everything increases. And what they're also doing on the prairies, I have a friend who lives in Kansas, they're bringing back the bison. So the bison were once part of that ecosystem, and they aerated the ground with their hooves. They wallowed, they made buffalo wallows, so they distributed seeds, and they made little areas that could capture the rain so other creatures could drink. So there's a lot of people, both native and non-native, who are bringing back bison herds and restoring them to the prairie. So there's a lot of things to be hopeful for, actually, that we don't really hear about. This next one I really like, less painful needles. Who hates to go have their blood drawn? So if you're afraid of needles, or if you just have crappy veins, you know that it can be a very painful experience. And I was a phlebotomist for 9 years, so I have heard it all. Here comes the vampire. You know, we get no respect. But the goal is to not hurt people, and it's really hard sometimes when people do have tiny veins or roly veins, and you don't want to hurt. I mean, you want to get the blood, that's your number one goal, but you don't want to hurt anybody either. So by watching mosquitoes, they have figured out that the proboscis of a mosquito actually has 3 parts, and they're different lengths, so they enter your skin. This is why you don't feel the bite, actually. You feel the itch afterwards, but you don't actually feel them going in and sucking the blood out. And that's because of this design. So they have now designed needles for phlebotomists to go in and get the blood that's less painful. The other reason you don't feel pain with the mosquitoes is that at the moment that they stick you, they spit on you. They put saliva into that, and it anesthetizes it. So, and that's what makes you itch afterwards, which I didn't know. Mosquitoes love me. Ticks not so much, but mosquitoes love me. This next one, shark skin. The Olympic swimwear, back in 2008, the Olympic swim team wore Speedos, which is I mean, they're so microscopic, why even bother? But anyway, I don't get it. So somebody figured out by studying shark skin that the skin of sharks has these little scale-like structures called dermal denticles that propel the shark forward and reduce drag. And they also have little ridges on them that prevent dirt and other bacteria from sticking to the shark. So they're antibacterial, antimicrobial, and they also make you be able to move faster. So Speedo designed bathing suits for the 2008 Olympic swim team, resulting in a U.S. winning 98% of the gold medals, which didn't go over well. So the Speedos were thereafter banned. But this material is still used in fabrics in hospitals for linens and other fabric surfaces that people might touch, because it's a way of reducing disease, the spread of disease, which is really cool. The glass in high-rise buildings. Somebody was watching spiders and how spiders weave their webs. And although a bird strike on your window might be upsetting and annoying, if you're a spider and a blue jay plows through your handiwork, you've lost your home and maybe your food for a few days. So spiders have a special kind of silk. So they weave their web with their regular silk, but then they have this other kind of silk that they can inject threads that are reflective. So the birds see this and don't tend to go through the webs. So they have used this, based on that knowledge, they have figured out some kind of fiber to put into glass, especially in like the high-rise buildings and the big windows, to eliminate airstrikes by birds in the windows. So they have to do that with airplanes now, I think, because that's a problem. Evaporation toilets. There's a company in Massachusetts called iThrone. This is true. That has developed toilets that use no water, no plumbing, and no power. They're cheap, they're portable, it evaporates human waste 95%. So they're using those in refugee camps, places that they need large amounts of sanitation when there's nothing there, when there's no infrastructure. So that's a really good thing. And the last example that I have is the Japanese bullet train. So the Japanese trains are famous for being fast and sleek and quiet. So when they first developed the Japanese bullet train, it was quiet until it got to tunnels. So apparently there are a lot of tunnels in Japan. There's a lot of mountains in Japan. And they found that when it entered the tunnel and when it exited the tunnel, it made a lot of noise. And people living in that region were upset. So by looking at 3 different creatures, they fixed this problem. So now the nose of the bullet train is fashioned after the very long beak of the kingfisher, because they observed that the kingfisher could just dive into the water without a ripple, without making any noise, and get the fish. So that's the nose of the train. And then they did the coupling on the top that attaches to the electrical source, and the coupling on the bottom that attaches to the rail. The one on the top, they designed after owl wings, because certain owls had the ability to fly with no sound at all, none. And the bottom that makes the contact with the rail, they designed after the belly of the penguin, because they slide on their bellies without any drag and without any problem, and no noise as well. So they're also doing things with slime mold, making a new kind of concrete. Concrete is really bad for the environment, but they're making a new kind of concrete with live slime mold that somehow adheres together and makes it stronger and kind of grows the concrete. I don't really understand that one. I need to read more about that, but it was fascinating. They're exploring ways to make more stable bridges based on dogs' anatomy, the way dogs move, their skeletons and their back legs, especially when they jump up like to get a frisbee. There's something about that, something locks that makes it stable. and they're using that for bridge design. And they're exploring desalination techniques inspired by mangrove roots. So unfortunately, we keep getting rid of mangrove groves to build real estate. That's what we do. So that's all the technical stuff and all the practical stuff, but I wanted to take it a step further because that's what I do. And I thought that all of these principles could really also be viewed through a spiritual lens, connecting us with nature and the divine. So this intersection allows for a deeper understanding of both the natural world and our relationship with it, fostering connection, humility, and a sense of awe. Recognizing that nature has evolved efficient, sustainable, and interconnected systems over billions of years can inspire a sense of awe and wonder in contemplating the diversity, beauty, and genius of creation. It engenders a profound sense of appreciation and respect, and that is really what we are lacking, I think, when we look at nature. As children, we had that sense of awe. Everything is amazing, everything is wonderful, and everything is just delightful. And we've all become very jaded because we're adults. And we've had to be adults, and we've had to lay that aside, sadly, and it's not encouraged. Once you get to school, by the time you get to school, you've lost it. Whatever one's spirituality is, there can be no doubt that the magnificence of nature could not possibly have happened by chance. This is just my opinion. The more time we spend in nature, the more we become convinced that there is intelligent design at work and that we too are a part of it. We are amazing. We can be amazing. So I'm really at a loss to say who the author of all this creativity is, but I cannot believe that one does not exist, whatever you choose to believe. And to have created so much perfection, so much incredible color and texture, beauty, the other than human kin, those with fur and feathers and scales, the land, the waters, the sky, the stars, the moon and sun, the other celestial beings in our own solar system and beyond. If all of that is not evidence of a creator motivated by love, I don't know what is. So that brought me, I'm almost done, to Jet Pig. So I really like Jet Pig. Number one, I love pigs. And number two, that's the only way I can remember any of this. I could not tell you the principles, all of them, if my life depended on it. And I have to spell Jet Pig in my head from the beginning, but it helps me to remember our values. And our values are mimicked in nature. So justice is the natural law that I mentioned. The natural law does not discriminate. It is what it is. Either you obey it and things go well, or you decide to go against it and probably things don't go so well. Like if you decide to hike up Mount Washington with a pair of shorts and a tank top, you don't tell anybody where you're going, and you don't bother to check the weather and a storm comes up, things were not going to go well for you. Not the fault of nature, the fault of yourself. Justice is shown in the benefits of reciprocity. Everything in nature does what it does for the benefit of something else or everything else. There's no greed, there's no hidden agenda, there's no personal gain in nature. Everything is there. Everything knows its place except us, and everything does what it does for the benefit of the whole, so that it all works. And nature cooperates with one another. Equity. The biggest example of equity for me has always been the sun. The sun shines on everyone. Even when you can't see it, like today on a cloudy day, it's up there, it's shining. And it doesn't care who you are, where you live, what you look like, what your beliefs are, if any. The sun shines on all life and gives life to everything on earth equally. Doesn't care if you're good or bad. So I think that's the best example for me of equity. Everyone has a place in the web of life. We all belong to this web, and I always imagine this as a silver net with little tiny gems in each of the corners, and that's all of us. We each have our place, and we each are important, all of us, and each one is equally important. And in nature, everything is responsible for the smooth running of everything else. So nobody gets a pass. Nobody gets out of jail. Everybody is there for the benefit of the whole, and that's something that we struggle with, humans. Transformation, butterflies and moths. How a butterfly can turn into a caterpillar and eat itself silly on your milkweed plants that hopefully you've planted for them, and then form that cocoon and disappear and turn into liquid, completely annihilated. And then by magic, the imaginal cells that are in there kick in, and they start to build all the parts of the butterfly that's yet to emerge. And finally, at the end, when the cocoon opens, this beautiful monarch emerges and dries its wings and takes to the air. That is magic. That is transformation. And that is something that we all have the ability to do if we're willing to trust. It takes a lot of trust to get into that cocoon and trust that, in the end, you're going to be something. So everything transforms into something else. We transform. We're born, we grow. Even before we're born, if you think about what we are in our mother's wombs, we're like this little speck. And then as we evolve, we look like tadpoles, and we kind of look like fish for a while. We have tails, and we have like little fins, and we finally emerge as a miniature human being, and then we achieve adulthood, and finally we live, and we get old, and we go back. It's this wonderful, beautiful circle. We come into the world toothless with no hair. We go out of it toothless with no hair. It just all, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. That's the way it's supposed to be. And the other thing that transforms a lot is fire. We think of fire as being destructive, and certainly the fires that are burning now are. There are too many of them. Also, due to our lack of knowledge and listening to Native people. But from fires, other things can regenerate. Nothing is destroyed forever in the natural world. Everything turns into something else if you wait long enough. Pluralism, diversity that is on the chopping block right now in our country and elsewhere. Nature runs on diversity. And think about the crops we grow, not we personally, but big ag. One kind of corn, one kind of potato, one kind of grain. That's what happened in the Irish potato famine, one kind of potato. If they had grown something else, they would not have been in such dire straits. But we haven't learned anything from that. So the more you grow the same thing, it depletes the soil in the same way, so you get pests, then you have to use more poison. It's just this vicious circle and we're eating all of that stuff. We're eating all of those poisons. So diversity that's like the three sisters, three things growing together in perfect harmony. They all helping each other out. So diversity is a principle of nature that we would do well to mimic. If nothing else, I think that's the most important one these days. It makes everything stronger. Interdependence, or Thich Nhat Hanh called it interbeing. We are all connected. We are all interdependent. We cannot make it on our own, any of us. And in our country, from the very beginning, we have lauded this idea of the lone wolf, the rugged individual, bringing yourself up by your bootstraps, making it on your own. That's kind of the appeal of someone whose name I shall not mention to those who like him, But that's not how it works. That's not how life works. That's not how nature works. And we can learn a lot from being out in nature and watching how everything helps one another and everything is interconnected. And finally, generosity. Nothing in nature exists for its own benefit. everything gives to something else. Everything gives to the whole. Nature is generous, and there's no reason why we can't be generous too. You know, it makes you feel good. It makes you do good. And you never know, the person that you're generous to today might just be the person who helps you out tomorrow when you're in dire straits. So it's also a good insurance policy if you just want to think of it as how it can benefit you. So I know a lot of you love nature and you go for walks and you garden and all of that, but I really invite you the next time you're out in nature to think about some of these things, to really look, to slow down and be quiet and just find a sit spot and really look and notice with eyes open what you're seeing and how it works. We can learn so much. I have really come to regard the natural world as my teacher, my mentor. It's all I need. I have lots of books. I won't live long enough to read them all that I've collected. And they're wonderful, and I learn lots of things, but I don't need any of them. I just need the natural world. I need my cat to teach me respect, and he does. So even he has a place. And dogs, for the dog lovers, dogs teach you love, unconditional love. So I'd like to read one last poem in closing, and this is called In Praise of Gaia. I call the earth Gaia. Goddess Gaia, primordial mother of all life, born of fire and ice, ever shifting, ever changing. From you we come and to you we return. Our journey begins in the watery realm of our human mother's womb. When it is time, we leave that safe cocoon, and with our first inhalation become creatures of the air. Sharing breath with the trees, from first to last we live in perfect reciprocity. Our bodies grow from sunlight and starshine. Our bones share minerals with your mountains. Our blood mimics your rivers and streams. Our skin comes in many colors, as does yours: beige, brown, black, ochre. The salt in our blood, sweat, and tears reminds us of our aquatic beginnings millennia ago. You are our first mother and our last. From you we receive all nurturance. You teach us to be good you teach us to be good humans through the examples set by your other children. In these times of turmoil and shifting landscapes, teach us to remain true to ourselves and to you. Help us to stay out of fear. And when we make our final journey around the sun, open your body to receive us once again. Welcome us home and hold us in eternity as your beloved children. Thank you.